And again, I want to know whether you personally, not whether you think that, oh, well, okay, Allah said it is fine, whether you actually think that that is fair.
Well, first and foremost, the apostasy situation doesn't occur in the Quran. It occurs in the prophetic traditions, also known as hadiths, narrations attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And there's a whole science behind hadith, if they're sound, they're valid, if they're weak, based on historicity. That's a long discussion. However, to cut a long story short, there's about 3 or 4 opinions with regards to apostasy, because in Islam we don't take one statement and run away with it. We take the whole corpus of material and we make a valid judgment. So there's a few opinions. The first opinion is that apostate, if he becomes a political apostate and he fights against the Muslims, then that's described as punishable by death. Another apostasy is, for instance, when
well,
they just...
I can pause you there. I can pause you there for this reason. If the penalty for the other two is somewhat different, it really doesn't matter. Do you think that the penalty for the one that you have described, do you personally think that that is fair?
Well, yeah, if someone's going to fight against the community, they should be...
they should be stoned to death, yes?
No, that's not the punishment.
What is the punishment?
From my understanding, it may be limited, it's actually beheading.
Beheading. And you're comfortable with that?
Well, you don't feel any pain with it, that's the first thing.
Okay, and there's no purpose before it.
Wait, Aaron, just want to make sure.
Yeah.
You're saying that beheading is acceptable, you think it is fair, and you're justifying it, amongst other things, on the basis that the person doesn't feel any pain.
No. I'm not justifying it at all like that. What I'm saying is, if someone, for example, in Britain we have laws, well, we did have treason laws. In America we have similar laws, and the law is if you basically commit treason, you could be liable to death.
Yes,
and
the last person to be hung in or suffer capital punishment in this country was, I think, 1954 or maybe 1956.
Yes.
You'd like to think that we have progressed from that stage. America,
we still have the death penalty in
I just want to know that you're suggesting that, no, I'm not even suggesting. I just want to know your personal view that you actually think that beheading someone for apostasy is acceptable and fair. Your views.
Yeah, my view is if someone fights against a particular community, then they have that danger to that community has to be ceased.
Even if they're not a danger, even if they're right, it doesn't matter. They went against the numbers majority rules. You get killed because we can't come up with a more civil way of dealing with it.
I'm saying that if they fight against the community physically.
The thing that I'm struggling with, there are other methods of conflict resolution other than cutting people's heads off.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, okay, you mentioned before about the hadith and the varying degrees of perceived authenticity.
I appreciate that, Aaron, yeah, but I'm saying, when I mean fighting, I mean actually killing someone.
No, you are not. And do not try and use that defense, because this program is being recorded and it will be posted. And people at
don't forget, Hamza,
at this very moment can go back and re-listen to what you just said.
I did say
specific,
if they fight
specific issues.
Yeah,
I'm being specific.
Yeah, go
death penalty for apostasy, death penalty for blasphemy, right?
But what does apostasy mean?
Promotes, Islam condones a death penalty for both of those crimes, right?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay, there we go. Neither is justified, because if somebody figures out.
But what do you mean by apostasy? That's the point. If one of the opinions of the tradition is that apostasy is when you not only leave the tradition, but then you start physically fighting the tradition. I mentioned this a few minutes ago.
I'm sorry, but the histories tell a different story. Abu Bakr didn't wait for the other tribes before he started the Ridda conflicts to wage war against him. He preemptively attacked them.
That's because they weren't paying the taxes.
So well then why didn't you addend your statement by saying fighting against them or not paying a mandatory tax that they've arbitrarily...
Let me clarify the question again. Apostasy without violence. Does Islam permit that a non-violent apostate could be killed simply for being a non-violent apostate?
Some interpretations have that view.
So it is possible that Islam does condone a death penalty for a non-violent apostate.
Yes, there is an interpretation.
Okay. And that
what about blasphemy?
Oh, jeez, hold on. I'm getting to that.
Let Aaron go.
Right.
Aaron, carry on.
So when someone figures out different information, they are not permitted to believe what the evidence implies to them. They are not permitted to believe outside of the limited scope of interpretation under pain of death.
That's what
and you don't recognize this as being the core tenets of a lie.
There's 20 conditions to apostasy. One of the conditions include, if they have a question, it must be answered. If there's debate and dialogue, if someone is an intellectual apostate, they must be debated and have a dialogue with. We saw this in Baghdad, where atheists used to debate the Muslims in Baghdad, okay? So the point is, we really need to understand Sharia law or not, because in fairness, guys, let me tell you something. In fairness, you may disagree with the output and the product and the fruit of it, but there's a whole discussion involved. Classical scholars discussed who is an apostate. What are the conditions? If he's intellectual, for example, we need to have a discussion. If he always has a question, then he's not touched, for instance, yeah? So there are nuances to this discussion.
Not really. If you really want to bring up Sharia law, we can go down that path. I think that you...
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Even more embarrassed than you are already by trying to justify the unjustifiable.
What's the punishment for rape in Islam? Tell me, Mr. Sharia expert. Yeah? What's the punishment for rape in Islam?
Well, that's the real fundamental problem, isn't it? Right? Is that there are as many interpretations of Sharia as there are Muslims.
No.
So I can give you any answer that I want. And
I can answer. Admittedly, interpretations vary, but in some countries, it's 100 lashes if you get raped because you committed adultery.
And if you happen to be 14 years old and can't withstand that much damage, then you will be killed in the process, just like that girl was raped a few weeks ago.
Okay. Well, let me see.
The woman in United Arab Emirates who was, what was it? She was raped, and when she reported it, she was put in jail for 6 months.
Well, exactly. Javier, listen.
And then she's not allowed to leave if nobody comes to get her.
Let's Hamza attempt to respond to these points.
The reason I pull this question because it actually shows we make value judgments on a tradition and we have absolutely no knowledge of it. We look at sociological circumstance and not the intellectual tradition. For instance, when I went to the World Atheist Convention, majority of the people who attended were thinking that a woman needs 4 witnesses when she gets raped and she would get stoned and lashed. That has nothing to do with the Sharia.
That is not true. Firstly, none of us here have ever said that it requires 4 witnesses.
I didn't say it was you.
And if you are doubting for what, I'm sorry, please. If you are doubting for one moment, sorry, Hamza, please.
Yes.
If you are doubting for one moment that the Sharia courts, that after hearing a case in relation to rape or adultery, do not pass a sentence of death by stoning, then I will provide links within literally seconds. Do not deny that. You can't. And you can't even justify it.
If I went on the web to discuss, for example, atheist views on particular things, I would see how
change. Are you? No.
When you read a book,
challenge me.
Read a book.
Do not challenge me on this one. Are you suggesting I cannot, within a few seconds, get a link from a reputable source that will show that a Sharia court has imposed the death penalty by stoning for homosexuality, adultery, or blasphemy? Are you really going to challenge me? Because I'm going to embarrass you if you do.
That's not the topic. The topic's about rape.
Yes, that is the topic.
No, it's not. The topic's about rape. What are you talking about? We were discussing, do you know the punishment for rape? And then my point was...
the man or the woman? Which one?
Both. You really need to calm down. You really need to calm down. Take a chill pill, yeah? Have another cigarette. Just listen to me for 1 second.
Don't leave us in suspense.
Let me finish. Let me finish. So what I'm saying is, at the atheist convention, especially when it emanates from the mouth of Miriam Namazi, they will talk about outdated cliches with regards to Sharia. I don't care what a Sharia court says. I go to the intellectual tradition. Let's read a book, an academic book from a non-Muslim written in Cambridge.
So you avoid reality?
No. But that's
I'm going to get a link for you.
You know what? That's the biggest logical fallacy I've heard today. The biggest logical fallacy. So the
Just out of interest, was Muhammad an intellectual Muslim?
Let me just finish.
Don't ignore that. Let's not get sidetracked. Let him finish.
Let me get her. My point is this: the sociological output of a particular society doesn't really define its intellectual tradition. I don't care how many links you give me. I could give you links about rape in this society. Does it mean everyone's a rapist in Britain? Of course not. Think about what you're doing. It's childish.
Nor did we imply anything like that.
But that's why I didn't say you. I said the people I spoke to. People I spoke to at the World Atheist Convention, the majority of them had this view. Now, my point, if we want to learn about the Sharia, we must pick up at least a textbook on the Sharia written by a reputable source, not a Muslim and non-Muslim, from a British or American or English-speaking institution. So when we do read, we won't always rely on sociological things, like, for example, what some man did in Pakistan or what some unjust, duplicit government that, frankly, the Muslims don't want to be part of anymore, as we can see from the Arab Spring Rising. The point is, let's read and educate ourselves. And that's my point is, when it comes to rape, it's not under adultery.
Whoa.
She doesn't have to bring full witnesses.
Stop.
No, I'm going to finish. Sorry, I have to finish this point. She doesn't have to bring full witnesses. It goes under the...
No one has said that she does.
Let him finish.
I know that. I'm missing the point. Her witness is fine. DNA testing is fine. And it goes under the crime of unlawful warfare, or called hiraba in Arabic, yeah? And it's a different category of punishment. The reason I brought this up is not to accuse you, is to accuse, not even accuse, is to say that there are outdated cliches with regards to the Sharia. And even yourself, what you've just said, you've said, proof against me is a link of some Sharia court. That's not proof against me. That's proof against your analytical skills, because you haven't picked up a book on Sharia law.
No, it's
Hamza.
because the interpretation reflected in the link that GBR would drop would make all the same arguments that you're making and claim that their intellectual tradition, or whatever you want to call it, is better than yours. So it's like fighting with action figures.
No.
And it's worse than that, because by observation, this is how Sharia law is practiced. Right? That is actually a legal system that is extant now.
No, that's not true.
Yes, it is. That's why.
Links.
You could send as many links you want. Look, the point is this: the majority.
Saying that you can come up with a different interpretation of Sharia is essentially a completely irrelevant red herring. What we are interested in is how is Sharia law practiced today.
What I would agree with you is it's practiced unjustly. There's no transparency. But I mean, you say that you have an intellectual interpretation. They say they have an intellectual interpretation, but theirs is the one that is implemented. Yeah, I know,
and that's why we associate Sharia law with the implementation of Sharia law.
Let me give you an example.
Because that's how it's implemented.
In Pakistan, there was a village. And when the baby came from an adulterous mother, they stoned the baby. Do you understand what I'm saying here? We live in dark times, people.
Yes, and they did that because
the Muslim world lives in dark times.
Yeah, well...
Yes, in the United States, they've never stoned a baby. Even in the highly... Wait, please.
But we've gassed
we do have the death penalty. Hey,
Iraq, so that's
hold on. We do have the death penalty in the United States in the highly religious areas, and we have discovered that the death penalty is not a deterrent because we also have the most murders and the most violent crimes in the most religious areas. Conversely. So the death penalty does not serve as a deterrent, and it only exists in areas where they are way too religious to begin with. In more secular communities, you don't have that level of violent crime. In more secular communities, you are more reasonable. They don't do the death penalty at all.
There's more gun and knife crime in the West than anywhere else in the world. What are you talking about?
Yes, they are, because the United States is the most religious. Because the United States is the most religious of all the first world countries. So, of course, we have the highest crime rate. Get the correlation?
No, I don't get the correlation. It's a secular society. It's a soft secular society.
Unfortunately, it isn't any longer.
It's a secular government, but not a very secular society compared to other developed nations, compared to like Japan or Norway or someplace like that. I mean, in Japan, you can walk down some of the darkest streets in some of the biggest cities in the dead of the night, and you're perfectly safe.
May I also just